Good morning and welcome to Marjorie's table on this 12th of November. We are going to do what we do every week at this session. We're going to do a quick warm-up exercise and then we're going to look at three, it used to be two, but I seem to be squeezing in a third poem by the same poet. And I'll give you a prompt to each of those. There's no right or wrong way to do this. I sometimes forget to say, but if something else comes to you that you really need to write this morning, and I've asked you to write about your cup of coffee, which mine is sitting here, and you really want to write about the weather or something else, anything else, please do that. You're here to write, so don't let us get in your way. Always feel free to mute me and carry on writing if you've hit a really rich vein. We are mid-writing retreat here in Galloway with the wonderful Jane Clark. So if you are both at the writing retreat and up early this morning writing with me, extra cake for you at the workshop this morning at 10 o'clock. Right, without further ado, let's get started. The first word I'm going to give you, and I just want you to make a list of whatever comes to mind, there's no right or wrong way to do it, is wheel, the word wheel. I'll pop that in the chat box. And now a list of words for wedge. Wedge. I'll put that in the chat box. Sometimes my American accent gets in the way. Wedge. And if you're willing, only if you feel up to it, and want to share a few of your words in the chat box, and I will do that now too. No pressure. You can just watch the others come in if that's easiest this time of morning for you. Okay, I'll read some of them as they come in, and you can, the idea is to steal a few and stick them on your own list so that you can use them in your writing if you wish. So if you like the sound of any of these, feel free to stick them on your list. Here we go. I'll read just a few as they've come. Spokes, spinning, descending, wheeling birds, beautiful tread, rutted, uh, universal, reliable, teenage high heels, that's wonderful. Hold fast, mahogany, sharp corner, screech, ajar, helmet, beautiful. Cartwheel with delight, beautiful. Doorstop, ringworm, ringworm, that's wonderful. Wet clay, shoes, hub, sleek spokes, missing spoke, flat tire, seagull, jam, squeeze, stuck, cycle, astrology, wobbly, spinning, whirling, invention, endlessly turning. Gosh, there's so many beautiful ones today. Dharma, I'm just reading the ones that I see as I scroll. Gyrate, Tarmacadam. I don't know if that I know what Tarmacadam is, so I might ask you to pop what that is and I'll come back to it later. Skylarks, thin end of, I love that phrase, the thin end of something. Spike, forest at miles per hour, rolling along. Clunk, clunk is a beautiful word. It's fun to say. Wedge, cheese, cake, perfect circle. Wooden, wedge forced into a misshapen place. That's beautiful. Road surface, keystone. Okay, I'm going to stop. There are so many beautiful words there. So the idea is to stick a few onto your list, and then when you get writing, try and write with one of these words, preferably not your own, even in your writing. And as I say, most weeks, I think what it does for me, having done this for so long, is it makes me come at a story I want to tell in a different direction. You can always take the other person's word out if it doesn't sound like you or your voice. Um, but often it makes me come at a story I know well in a fresh way, and it makes the writing feel fresh. Or if I'm trying to put in the thin edge of into a story about, I don't know, the birds flying over the cliff tops, then I suddenly try and think of it in a fresh or different way, or make a leap in a way. Today we're going to look at, we'll move on to the poet. We're going to look at Fleur Adcock's work, who is a wonderful, who passed away this year, sadly, after a long life. She's a New Zealand British poet, one of the kind of grand dames, I would say, of the poetry world. If you don't know her work, you'll be you'll get three of her poems today, and I encourage you to go find it. I met her at Stanza, the poetry festival in Scotland last year, very briefly, sat in the green room with her, and if I'm honest, I was almost too nervous to speak to her. And I also think, don't repeat this, but I think that Anthony Joseph, who was in the green room with us, he's probably just naturally quite quiet or shy and was preparing. But I thought at one point too, he was almost like, "Oh, that's Fleur Adcock," which is really nice. I could be misspeaking. I don't know Anthony that well. I popped the link to this poem in the chat box of Fleur's. If you're going that direction rather than watching my screen, it's quite a ways down. There's about 15 poems there, and this is maybe half of the way down. So keep scrolling if you're trying to find it on your screen. Here we go. Clay. Just before we left the farm by the brickworks, Peter Jackson smashed my clay tea set, thus ensuring that I'd remember him forever. Each lumpy cup, saucer, jug, plate, or bowl I'd fashioned out of the beige blue squelchiness had taken days to bake hard in the sun. No time to make more. Our holiday was over. My mother, coming to collect us, said, "It will all be the same in 100 years." I quoted it back at her after the first 50, still unconsoled. But now, too late to tell her, I give in. So it will, mother. Clay crumbles. I'll read it one more time and then give you my craft notes, and any thoughts you have on the poem, pop them in the chat box and we'll share them. Clay. Just before we left the farm by the brickworks, Peter Jackson smashed my clay tea set, thus ensuring that I'd remember him forever. Each lumpy cup, saucer, jug, plate, or bowl I'd fashioned out of the beige blue squelchiness had taken days to bake hard in the sun. No more time to make more. Our holiday was over. My mother, coming to collect us, said, "It will all be the same in 100 years." I quoted it back at her after the first 50, still unconsoled. But now, too late to tell her, I give in. So it will, mother. Clay crumbles. Couple of quick notes from me. I love this poem for its simplicity. If you've been on my short editing class, you'll know that one of the things I'm always looking for are things I call poety words, words that stand out for being so clever or just kind of are bright and sparkly in a poem. And sometimes I'm looking out for the way that they get in the way of the story of the poem or the narrative of the poem if you're trying to have a narrative poem. And here, I think that there aren't really any, maybe squelchiness, but in general, I think that word's doing a really good job. So it's got a lot of kind of regular words. And for that reason, I'm sunk into the poem when I read it. I'm sunk into the story, which really works for me here. So it's nothing standing in the way of this great idea almost that clay crumbles over time. Everything goes back. Um, Question about why there are three-line stanzas here. Not sure. But I think again that will be a decision Fleur has taken. So maybe it's her and Peter and her mother, or maybe it's time, past, present, future, the now, the 50 years and 100 years. But again, when you're editing your work, know that if you're putting things into a form, think about it doesn't have to have a reason, but often it sort of chimes with something you're trying to say. And then again, the ending here, so it will, mother, clay crumbles, for me is the kicker in the poem, is the thing that we didn't necessarily see coming because we were in the story of it. And it's all the more powerful for being buried in the form. So we don't see this big line coming. And I think that's true if you're writing prose or poetry. If you're sticking out the big line, your reader in some way sees it coming. And for me, it's more powerful when it doesn't. I think you might be also taken with this poem. I don't think there are comments, but come on, sometimes Zoom won't show me the chat box unless I stop showing. Nope. Okay, let's get, if you've got comments later, you can, oh, there's one. You can let me know and I can read them out. Perfect iambic meter too. Yes, thank you for pointing that out. Um, Esther, I'm so bad with meter. I should say that please always remind me because it's not something my brain pays much attention to. Three-lined lines, not so round, complete. Is this about crumbling? I love that idea, Pepe. Um, yeah, that it is, but and yet the form doesn't tell us that it's crumbling yet. You know, if you were going to be about crumbling in the sense if you wanted to flag that for your reader, you could have shorter and shorter lines and yet or longer and longer lines. And we don't have that. So there's something about this form that holds us so that we are surprised by the ending, or at least that's how I read it. Notice how you read it, because actually that's the most important thing, not how I read it, but how you take it in. I like the list of crockery, says Richard. The jug, the plate holds it up. Yeah, I agree. I think there's something about that simple, again, that physicality in the poem that really holds us to a place or an image is really important. For every time we have a big clay crumbles moment or I give in, even I give in, which is ephemeral, we need all those physicality or those really physical moments. Um, Esther is saying it's blank verse. Thank you. Succinct but touching and sad. Yeah, I agree. There's something really sharp and kind of together about this small poem. Perhaps the last short sentence at the end are kind of crumbling. Yeah, she's done something with short phrases at the end. I can see the crockery with the word lumpy, childlike. Yeah, me too. And that kind of blue, beige squelchiness. Yeah, you know that it's not precious, and yes, it is. It's elegant. Okay, thanks. Elegant too. I agree, Angela. I'm going to get us writing. The first thing to do is write about something worthless that seems precious or that is precious or something that's lost from your childhood. You've got two choices or whatever strikes your fancy about this poem. Something worthless that is precious or feels precious or was precious to someone and then and or something lost from your childhood. It's 45 minutes past, so I'll give us 6 or 7 minutes. I'll give you a minute's warning when we're coming back together. And remember, you've got a stack of beautiful wheel and wedge words to pop into your poem if you want, or your piece of prose if you want. I'll pop all of that in the chat box. Just another 30 seconds or so. Okay, here we go. Second poem, the link is in the chat box. Let's listen to her read it. I think there's a bit of an intro, but that's okay.
I write quite a lot about death, poems for people who have died. And this is a poem for a friend of mine called Meg Sheffield, who died in 1997. She was very adventurous. She always made me feel like a total wimp. And a lot of the things she did would have involved possibly falling off things like horses or skis or out of boats or whatever. So that comes into the poem. Rather ironically, I suppose, her death involved being knocked off something, being knocked off her bicycle by a 15-year-old lad who had stolen his mother's car. And he came up behind her and killed her not quite instantly enough. She was in a coma for 5 days. It's just called for Meg. Half the things you did were too scary for me. Skiing? No thanks. Riding? I've never learned. Canoeing? I'd be sure to tip myself out and stagger home ignominiously wet. It was my son that time in Kathmandu who galloped off with you to the temple at Badnath in a monsoon downpour, both of you on horses from the King of Nepal's stables, not me. And as for the elephants, my God, the elephants. How did you get me up onto one of those? First they lay down. The way to climb aboard was to walk up a gross leg, then straddle a sack, that's all there was to sit on, while the creature wobbled and swayed through the jungle for slow hours. It felt like riding on the dome of St. Paul's in an earthquake. This was supposed to be a treat. You and Alex and Maya in her best sari sat beaming at the wildlife, you with your camera proficiently clicking. You were pregnant at the time. I clung with both hot hands to the bit of rope that was all there was to cling to. The jungle steamed. As soon as we were back in sight of the camp, I got off and walked through a river to reach it. You laughed, but kindly. We couldn't all be like you. Now you've done the scariest thing there is, and all the king's horses, dear Meg, won't bring you back.
Okay, for the next sort of 4 minutes, write about the person who does the scariest things in your life or gets you to do them. Maybe that's you, but write about that. It could be you getting someone to do a scary thing or a person who convinces you to do something scary. I'll pop that in the chat box and I'll bring us back in 3 or 4 minutes just to listen to one last poem. Okay, I'm going to read us out of the room with this little short number of hers and leave you with a prompt to carry on writing if you'd like. Immigrant. November 63, 8 months in London. I pause on the low bridge to watch the pelicans. They float swan-like, arching their white necks over only slightly ruffled bundles of wings, burying awkward beaks in the lake's water. I clench cold fists in my Marks and Spencer's jacket and secretly test my accent once again. St. James's Park, St. James's Park, St. James's Park. If you want to keep writing, write about a time when you realized you were a stranger in the place because of the way you spoke the language, or perhaps with the wrong accent. A time when you realized you had the wrong accent or spoke with a slightly different accent. I will leave you there, and I will pop all three links to the poems as well as the words and things into an email that should land in your inbox by about 9 o'clock this morning. Thanks so much for being with me this morning. I hope you go off and read more of Fleur Adcock's works. It's absolutely worth it. But it always is, I think, for the poets that we have here on Wednesday mornings. So thanks for being with me. If you're here with me at the retreat, see you at 10 o'clock in the studio for another workshop. Bye for now. Have a great week, everyone. I'm off to make the cake. Don't worry.